Gaza City and other parts of the Gaza Strip are being reduced to rubble by Israel's unrelenting aerial bombing in its mission to wipe out Hamas, the terrorist group that governs Gaza and carried out the October 7 massacre of innocent Israeli civilians. Children, including babies in their cribs, women and the elderly, were slaughtered. In all, 1,400 Israelis were killed and hundreds wounded. In addition, Hamas fighters took over 200 hostages. Prime Minister Netanyahu says the goal of the military campaign, including the ground invasion of Gaza, is the extinction of Hamas. Netanyahu and members of his government insist that innocent civilians are not being targeted. However, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas, over 10,000 Palestinians living in Gaza have been killed, including thousands of children, women, the elderly, and patients in hospitals. Thousands others have been injured. In war, it's called collateral damage, but as the death and injury tolls mount, the chances of any type of settlement between Israel and the Palestinians grow dimmer by the day. I'm Bertram de Souza, host of the Scribbler video podcast that's streamed on YouTube, Facebook, and other digital platforms. I'm the retired editorial page editor and Sunday columnist of the now-closed Youngstown Vindicator. In October, I interviewed two supporters of Israel about the death and destruction in that highly volatile region of the world. Today, my guests are Dr. Suhad Hadi, president of the Arab American Community Center and a podiatrist, Musa Kassis, a member of AACC, and Rahid Kahatib, a member of the U.S. Palestinian Community Network. The discussion about the plight of the Palestinian people, not only in Gaza, but in the West Bank, does lead to a broader question. With all the blood that has been shed over the past month, is there any reason to believe that a permanent solution to the decades-long Israeli-Palestinian conflict is realistic? First of all, thank you, Suad, Musa, and Raed, for joining me today to discuss what must be a heart-wrenching issue for the three of you. So let me start with a version of a question I asked my two pro-Israel guests last month. And each of you can take as much time as you want to answer. When you see the scenes of death and destruction in Gaza and hear the health ministry, which is run by Hamas, say over 10,000 Gazan civilians have been killed, including many, many children, hundreds injured as a result of Israel's unrelenting aerial attack and now ground invasion. What goes through your mind, your heart, and your soul as a human being? And Suhad, let me start with you.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is, when is it going to end? I mean, Palestinians have become all too familiar with death, and death by war, to be honest. And the emotions are mixed. The emotions are those of frustration, anger, sadness. I was talking to friends the other day. It comes to the point where you're starting to feel hollow, like what more can we do from our end? And we're watching these people. I have 6 family members who were killed in Gaza, just in this uprising.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. You feel so helpless. You don't know what else can you do, you know? And I think it's legitimate anger, because it seems that the popular opinion internationally is to help the Gazans and to help Palestine. And it seems the unpopular vote is the winning vote right now. And so it's a feeling of hollow helplessness, to be honest with you, and anger, but yet it's a driving force and determination to keep moving forward for them and to do more and help them find peace.
Musa?
Yeah, sure. I would like to echo Suhad about this in particular. And, and of course, we watch this on a daily basis. And to tell you the truth, I probably have like maybe 1 or 2 hours sleep a night since the October 7 happened, because it's just a continuous emotional wreck for any person that have 1 ounce of humanity, seeing the destruction and the killing on a daily basis. The other day I was watching, you know, specifically when many of the civilians start moving from and fleeing from northern Gaza
Right.
to the south. And then on their way, there is a big street or avenue called the Shati,
Mm-hmm.
and that is exactly on the Mediterranean. And while they were doing there with mothers and children, Israeli warplanes, Apache helicopter, and also with Markava tanks shelling, you only see pieces of bodies you can't identify. It's just like a roadkill, more or less. That if you have, you don't know whether it's a rabbit, it's a deer, or it's a raccoon. That's how the bodies looked on the street. And that night, I really could not sleep. It is beyond anybody could really imagine these days in the 21st century, and we live in supposedly a very civilized world, and then you see what you see taking place, and nobody is even putting the pressure for that to stop. The other day, just also to echo Suhad, we have many of the people who live in Youngstown. We have good friend, all three of us, and he lost almost 35 to 40 people from his family so far. And we went approach him. He said, we let's come to the community center, to be together and console him about this massacre that happened. He said, wait, my family is so big, so maybe at 100 we'll do that. So that's how the situation is taking place there. Also, I have a personal situation where I have a cousin. She's married in Gaza. She's married to the Suri family. Suri family is a Christian Orthodox family,
Mm-hmm.
which is I am a Christian Orthodox,
Right.
and they were taking refuge in the oldest church, in the third oldest church in the world, Saint Porphyrius, built in 420 A.D. That church was bombed, uh, completely killing 16 people from the same family. So my cousin husband, his family, his first cousin with 3 boys and wife, they lost their life within that. So it is heart wrenching. And I could go on till morning talking about this, but it's beyond anybody could take it emotionally or mentally.
Right.
I just want to correct something that you mentioned. The injured are in the tens of thousands. It's not hundreds. But you know what's worse than what's unfolding before our eyes is the dehumanization of the Palestinian people, whether it's by the Zionist leaders from the highest levels to even their counterparts in the United States. They don't look at the Palestinian people as a human. Otherwise, tell me where the whole world would stand silent watching this onslaught going on day in, day out, and not move or do something about it. Only when it comes to Palestinians, it seems like, they don't look at them as humans. And that really hurts more than anything else to see. The double standards that we saw, with the Ukrainians, and how the officials, they were crying, rightfully so, over the deaths of civilians and the displacement of the Ukrainians by the Russian, troops. And then the same exact thing is happening to the Palestinian people, but yet nobody really cares, about the over 5,000 children so far have been massacred, by this, senseless war. And the United States, unfortunately, have a lot to do with it. They're being killed by U.S. made weapons and airplanes, and this double standard has to really stop. They have to really look at everyone as equal. To me, a child is a child, regardless of their ethnicity or religion, so an Israeli child, a Palestinian child, Ukrainian child, they're all the same. They're all children, and we should look at them in such, you know, the same eyes.
So before we go on, I appreciate the emotional toll that this is taking on each of you. There is no doubt. I mean, I didn't realize there were actually family members of each of you that's being affected and has been are victims. But and the reason in the opening question I mentioned heart and soul as a human being is because what was your reaction at the very beginning on October the 7th when you found out that Hamas terrorists had infiltrated Israel and had slaughtered 1,400 innocent people, including babies in their cribs and others? Was your, honestly, was your response or was your reaction as intense as it is now, given what's happening to the Palestinians in Gaza? And Suhad, let me start with you.
So I think the initial reaction was there was surprise. This was not something anybody expected to happen, but coming and understanding the history and the longevity of the Palestinian struggle, you see it as an attempt for Palestinians to fight for their liberation, for their self-determination. And, you know, nobody condones the death of civilians. And Lord knows we're suffering through the death of civilians and have been since 1948. And nobody condones that. And I think there was a lot of shock and surprise in the community. And there was probably a little bit of fear of the backlash, rightfully so. But I think in general, I didn't sit there and applaud it, but I sat there and did say, we're still fighting for the Palestinians' freedom. We're still fighting the occupation. We're still fighting. We're still resisting. And this is a piece of that.
Okay. Musa?
You know what? Unfortunately, the way we look at things, and from all of our perspective, that it is a heart-wrenching to see any civilian die in a battle or outside of battle. Right. For us to really understand, you know, what happened on October 7th, it was a surprise. It was not a shock, but actually it started as a battle within the war. The war that started actually 75 years against the Palestinians. So the war of attrition, I call it a war of attrition. So that this battle and the 5 wars before it with Gaza, these are big battles within that war that started since that time. Very unfortunate, very sad. But there is something that it's very important for us all to remember. There is an old Chinese proverb. So it says, if you dwell on the past, you are blind with one eye. If you forget the past, you are blind in two. And the Palestinians in particular are not blind. And the reason why, because 80% of the people live in Gaza right now, they came and they were driven out of their homes through force and through massacres from Gaza perimeters. So that's what we call Gaza perimeter now, are the settlements that they were built outside enclave in Gaza. So through the 1948 war and so on, they drive the Palestinian within the perimeter of Gaza to Gaza City to become an enclave of only 351 square kilometers with the highest density, population density of the world of 5,753 people per square kilometer. While at the same time, the confiscated land outside of Gaza, which is the settlements that attack took place, it's 1,038 square kilometers and only 50,000 settlers live in it. And they enjoying all kind of water, all kind of electricity, everything else. And the Palestinian in Gaza, literally, I know they call it an open air prison, but in the last 15, 20 years, it has been like more or less like a concentration camp. So all the land, including, by the way, for example, the settlement of Sderot, that was the attack there by the Palestinians.
Right.
Okay, that land is actually built, and that city is built on a Palestinian village called Najd. The people of Najd, up till now, they still live in Gaza City after 75 years. Ariel Sharon, in 1972, he purchased supposedly a ranch right there for sheep ranch.
Mm-hmm.
The distance of that, it's 4 square kilometers. You know, in the 4 square kilometers, how many Palestinian people from Gaza could live in there? 22,750 people, if you take the density of Gaza and put them in that range. So it has been, from that point on, the Palestinian, they are not blind. They didn't forget that. So, for example, April 9, 1948, the massacre of Deir Yassin, 128 children and women get killed. July 9, 1948, the city of Lidda massacre, 200, which is Lidda, by the way, it's by Tel Aviv. Up till now, there's 2,000 Palestinians living in it. A Tantura massacre. The Tantura massacre that now it is a resort called Nesh Holim. Nesh Holim, if you walk on the sand of Nesh Holim, Bertram, there is a mass grave underneath of the Palestinian, 222 people. Shame on any person that know this fact and walk on these sands on top of the Palestinian bodies up till now, since 75 years, up till now. So, and not only that, it carries outside of Palestine. The massacre of Sabra and Shatila, September 16, 1982. So no matter where the Palestinian goes, no matter in what refugee camp live in, Mukhayyam al-Hilwa, Ain al-Hilwa refugee camp in Saydal, in Beirut, it was completely demolished in 1982. So we look at these, and the Palestinians say, for God's sake, where could we go? How could we do? So that eruption on that day, it came through, as sad as it is, as we don't condone, believe me, we do not condone any civilian death. But it was an attack to start with on a military basis and also on a settlement, which is militarized settlement. These are not pure civilian at one point, but let's assume that they are. Also, in order for not to take hostages, there is a report, and I would like you to dig this and everybody to dig this. There was a conversation between a settler and the Haaretz newspaper as a witness of what happened on one of the settlements, because they taken hostages by the Palestinian. The Israeli Apache helicopter and the shelling, they shelled Israelis and Palestinians. So what you see, and many of civilians, Israeli civilians die, and we don't condone that. They die with Israeli fire. We died by Israeli fire on that day, by the witness of a settler for the Haaretz newspaper. So we don't create these. We live it. The Palestinians live it. And then say, okay, what is the solution? We try a solution of 1993 Oslo. We close one eye. We say, okay, let's blind with one eye, as according to that Chinese proverb. But it happened. Now 30 years after that, and the Palestinians didn't achieve anything. They didn't get anything where they want, and that's where it erupted. Sadly, many civilians died, and we don't condone that.
Ryan, do you want to add to what?
Yes, I do have an issue with the part of your question, the children in the cribs and the beheading and all that stuff. This has already been debunked so many times, and also by the White House. So, I mean, let's be truthful and professional here, okay, for the sake of humanity. There has been nothing, not a single, incident where this could be factual. And if it was, I'll be the first one to denounce it. Okay, so there has nothing, not even one single, small, minute evidence that this took place. Number one. Number two, there is a lot of testimony that we have seen by settlers, by Israeli citizens, and how they were treated by the forces that they came in that day. So, I mean, just to go and assume that, the propaganda out there that we heard on the news media, especially the first 3 days, there is a lot of it is not true. And now they're adjusting and the truth is coming out, regardless how much they try to hide it and deflect and have people, look the other way and not see the facts and the truth as it is.
But yet, you will admit that people died in that, at the hands of Hamas terrorists, right? Or are you?
I'll use. No. There has been death, and there has been 5.1 million Palestinians who got murdered since 1948. That the problem with the media, whenever the Palestinians are being killed and murdered, they find terminology to make it look like it's okay, like collateral damage, or it's war and there is victims of wars and all that stuff. But yet when the table is turned and now there is an attack on occupied land, okay, and there is some people that got killed, who, whether they are civilians or not, the whole world, or the media at least, now they take issue with it. We want them to take issue when there is people dead on both or killed on both sides, not only on one side. And that's what's been happening so far.
I think too, Bert.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
go
Donna,
ahead.
go ahead.
Sir.
No, go ahead. No, it's fine.
I think too, Bertram, what people fail to really pinpoint is that, one, the Palestinians have been dehumanized so long that it's easy to throw the label on, and every action or reaction we have or Palestinians have is terroristic. It's barbaric. That's the first thing we heard when this happened, October 7th happened. Look how barbaric they are. They're like animals. We have to kill them all. The media has played into this. The leadership has played into this, and they have literally painted the picture of barbaric animals, uncivilized society in Palestine, and that what we do is savage and what Israel does is defense. And if you look at UN Resolution 3742, it states the legitimacy of the struggle of peoples for independence, territory integrity, national unity, and liberation from colonial and foreign forces. And this is including armed struggle. So to sit and expect Palestinians to be complacent, living in a purposely created concentration camp in Gaza. This is where they funneled people from the Nakba in 1948, which is how my father's family ended up there. And this is how now they keep funneling people as they get evacuated, or if they're released from prisons, they are sent to Gaza. At some point, the boiling point and the dehumanization of these people, because they're living in a poverty-stricken area that is restricted from movement, is where this world has gone wrong. And they've allowed us to be dehumanized in this way, where any action we take is always the evil action. It is always defined as the evil action. And it's always, here they go again. Whereas Ra'id or Musa mentioned earlier, when we sit here and we're watching events unfold between Ukraine and Russia, and we see the Ukrainians defending their land against Russia, and everybody's applauding them and cheering them on, and they're freedom fighters. Yet when the Palestinians are defending themselves against a 75-year occupation, and it goes back before that, if you read the works of Theodore Herzl and the Zionist Manifest, 1896, 1917, the Balfour Declaration, and then its later implementation in 1948 and the forceful takeover of Palestinian land, you understand that these people have been living under military occupation, and they've been dehumanized for so long that the world has become desensitized to the need of the Palestinian people. But Ukraine, we sit there and we applaud because we have not dehumanized the Ukrainians.
And yet, and this is for anyone who wants to take this, and when I talk to Israelis, when I talk to Jews, what I hear from them is this, that the Jews have suffered mightily in history, including the 6 million Jews that were exterminated by the Nazis under Hitler. And therefore, in their mind, there is always that warning about, the future and what's going to happen to Jewish people. And so in talking to, for example, last month to the pro-Israeli guests, they did talk about the fact that they are fighting for their very existence in a state called Israel. Is that an over-exaggeration? Is that go ahead, whoever wants to take this.
Exaggeration to say that after the Holocaust they were not fighting for their existence. That is absolutely true. On the flip side of that, we used to listen to my grandfather's stories about how they greeted the Jews off the ship when they were brought to Palestine. They welcomed them into their homes. They welcomed them into their businesses. They provided them the basic necessities they needed to get started, only to turn around and have them steal the land right underneath their feet and the homes that they were living in. So for the Jewish people to say that they've been struggling since they arrived to Palestine to save themselves and their identity, I think that's a falsehood, because people have to remember also there was a Jewish presence in Palestine before this, before 1948. Right. The Jews, the Christians, the Palestinians, they lived in peace together. There was a mutual respect for these, if you want to take a religious path to it or just a personal path to it, there was peace within the land, and they lived peacefully amongst each other. And I think one thing we really need to differentiate is between, is this a Jewish thing or a Zionist thing? And we try to teach our families that it is the Zionist movement that has pretty much imposed itself upon the Palestinian land. There are Jews who live in Palestine who do, and I think Musa mentioned, that do not agree with what's happening there. They want to see peace. They want to see either a two-state solution or let the Palestinians live in peace. It is not the mindset of every Jew out there that we have to take out the Palestinians, but it is the mindset, if you read the Zionist manifest, of the Zionist movement. And we have to remember that there was a time when they were coming over and, Balfour Declaration offered them the Palestinian land for whatever reason. We have to understand that other countries closed their borders to the Jews. U.S. closed its borders. Canada closed its borders. Britain closed its borders. All of these countries did not allow them entry.
Yeah, there was also talk about sending them to the African country of Uganda at some point over that history.
Yeah. And Argentina, by the way.
Yeah.
And let me jump in here for a second. I'm sorry, are you done, Suhad? Go ahead. Finish your point. We have to understand something. Israel does not represent the Jews of the world or Judaism. Okay, Israel is that Zionist ideology that was created in 1897 is really what Israel. These are a bunch of atheists. They have really nothing to do with any religion. Okay, and the Jews were persecuted all over Europe, by the way, where the Holocaust took place. The Holocaust did not take place in the Middle East or in Palestine. So, I don't know if the analogy of your question is so. They were persecuted and now they found a place that they can call home, but for them to call a place home is creating a Holocaust for other people who were there for thousands of years. So, that's why we find so many of our brothers in the Jews in this country, even the Jewish Voice for Peace, they're against the Zionism, they're against the state of Israel. They are not for this bloodshed, and they have been for many years, and they joined in protest and all the activities against Zionism, not against Jews.
Musa?
I think
if I may.
Go ahead, Suhad, finish your thought, please. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go back historically to really understand the bigger picture. We keep telling people this is not a 1-month war. This is not the Palestinians acting up again. this has been an ongoing struggle with millions of Palestinians killed since 1948. Yet it's like Musa said, one blind eye, and we've got to open the eyes sometimes. Go ahead, Musa. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, no, that's perfect. I just wanted as a segue to what I was going to say, which is a continuation of the same thoughts that you have presented, that when the Zionist movement in the Fifth Zionist Congress in 1903, Britain have given them Uganda to live in.
Yeah.
And when they voted, 295 delegates voted in favor, 177 rejected the idea, and they wanted Palestine. And then Herzl sided with them. And then after that, Herzl and after him, his follower, Chaim Weizmann, they realized that they have to depend on the big power and the world power in order to settle. So in 1914 in particular, which is before the Holocaust, in 1914 in particular, the estimated Palestinian number were 689,272 according to the census. And among them, 60,000 or 90% were Palestinian Jewish people living in Palestine at that time. Now, the head of the Zionist person he was the administrator responsible for the colonization of Palestine. His name is Joseph Weitz. Joseph Weitz, and he said, and I will quote, "Between ourselves, it must be clear that there is no room for both people together in this country. The only solution is a Palestine without Arabs. And there is no other way than to transfer the Arabs from here to the neighboring countries. To transfer all of them, not one village, not one tribe, should be left." And I will give you the citation where this one happened. This is in his memoir that he wrote, "My Diary and Letters to the Children." It is Amasada, 1965, chapter 3, page 293. And this was in 1967. So now the sad thing is that last week, Netanyahu's solution for the people of Gaza: open the borders in Egypt, go live in Sinai. It transferred the 2.5 million people there, and the people in West Bank to Jordan. And then when Egypt rejected, you know what he said? He said, "Oh, I have an idea. I have a brilliant idea. I wanted to ask the World Bank to forgive Egypt $42 billion in debt, providing that they take the Palestinians." So the money is not his, the country is not his, Egypt is not his, the money that they owe is not his. And then he said, "Okay, and I have a brilliant idea. Why don't I give you money from the world and go live there?" So this is the policy of 1914. And I tell you what, as Suhad mentioned, our heart more than anybody else goes out to the victims of the Holocaust. Nobody in the world, not even one person, not 6 million. One person die is one person too many in our opinion, because this is how our heart is. But at the same time, we cannot continue living today in historic Palestine. Historic Palestine, that the geographic area that lived prior to 1948, 52% are Palestinian and 48% are Jews. Population bomb that exploded with all over Palestine. So the number per number. So now it is turning into an apartheid state. The only solution, if you want, Oslo is gone. Settlement in the West Bank and two-state solution, there is no way it could be attainable. So therefore, only one man, one vote. This is one of the only solution. And whether they're going to fight for it, accept it, not accept it, but in my opinion, that would be the only way.
It's clear that neither the Palestinian people nor the Israelis are going to walk away from that geographic area called Israel.
Yep.
And I'm reminded, and Suhad might be too young to remember this, but perhaps both of you will. You remember an ABC journalist, he was an anchorman, but he was also a reporter, Peter Jennings, who went to the Middle East, and he did a very, very in-depth reporting about what was going on in the Middle East, and he talked about, it was called The Children of War. And the bottom line was, these are children growing up with death and destruction around them. And they are going to be the next generation of fighters.
Yeah.
And
Bertram,
that has come to pass. And so my question is, given what's going on right now, given the number of deaths that have occurred, given the number of children who have been orphaned, who are left, given the number of people who are destitute, there's no reason to believe that this conflict will be forgotten anytime soon by the Palestinians, is there?
this conflict will be ingrained in people's memories and the world the same way the Holocaust was. I don't think it'll ever be forgotten. We are raising children cyclically in periods of war. Every child born in Palestine only knows war.
Yeah.
And until this comes to an end, again, this will be ingrained in people's memories. I'm just hoping that the world gets on the right side of history and helps defend the Palestinian cause. But yeah, I do remember Peter Jennings. I'm a little older probably than you realize. But
all right. I didn't want to insult you.
But
so.
No, that's okay. It's true that these children are born in war. And so when people say these kids only know war, it's true. That's all they know. They only know how to respond in that way. They're used to the struggle. These children are born, many of these young kids have PTSD, they have anxiety issues, they have a lot of psychological issues that need to be addressed. No different than the men and women who go to war and come back that have these issues. These children are growing up with it their whole life. And these parents in Gaza and areas of the West Bank and Jenin and other areas of Palestine that are being constantly under siege, under bombardment, under the apartheid conditions that Palestine has imposed upon them, are raised to resist and to always want to fight and always want to push to have something better. I don't think anybody would want to deny any human being the push to fight for something better. And one thing we haven't touched on too is that Israel is an apartheid state. Palestinians have different colored license plates. Palestinians have different roadways they can travel. Palestinians, kids and workers have to go through 2, 3, 4 checkpoints and stand in them like animals in a cage for 1 to 2 hours at a time just to get from point A to point B. I mean, I live in Liberty. I can freely drive to Girard, but a Palestinian probably has to go through 2 or 3 checkpoints and be humiliated and searched. Last time I traveled there, I was searched for 3 hours. And then once I was released from the airport in the parking lot, they stripped everything out again in the car and searched me for another 3 hours. This is dehumanizing. This is belittling. This is discouraging. This is a tactic being used to try to get people to not even want to come back and visit their family and relatives. So I think people don't understand the apartheid condition. A lot of people don't understand what military rule is. I had people ask me, well, why does Gaza depend on Israel for their electricity and water? Why don't they get their own? People in general in the community, in the world, sometimes don't even understand what these conditions are like. And these children, that's all they live every day. This is all they know. And all they know is to try to fight for better. So they are children of war.
And Bert,
go ahead.
Bert, they don't have, actually living in those conditions does, bring a different kind of mentality in people. But we have to understand that occupation in itself breeds resistance.
Yes.
We are humans, we have dignity, we have pride. So when you subject people to occupation for 75 years, Israel did everything, the Israelis did everything they can to secure themselves, but yet they don't have security. They built walls, they committed massacre after another, they stockpiled all kinds of weapons, whether it's nuclear or not. They killed poets, politicians, activists. They did everything anybody could possibly think of. But yet they cannot put down the resistance, because occupation breeds resistance. This is the thing that they need to get through their heads, that there is no way you're going to subdue these people, the Palestinian peoples, because they're humans just like anyone else. They have dignity, they have a pride, and they're not going to be subjugated to this kind of life under the boots of the military occupation, and they just accept it. That's never going to happen. It's been 75 years, and it will go on for another 75 years or another 75 years until the occupation is no more.
So let me ask the question, and frame the question this way. If you listen to Netanyahu and members of his government, and even to other European Western country leaders, they'll argue that if you get rid of Hamas, if you get rid of Hezbollah, if you get rid of Islamic Jihad and all of these other terrorist groups that are fomenting violence, death, and destruction, the Palestinians and the Israelis will wake up one morning and live in peace, side by side as neighbors. You want to respond to that?
Bertram, I would like to add one more F.
What's that?
And if the Israeli occupation finished, then that will be no problem. The most important thing, the cause and the root of all the problem is the occupation. Palestine been occupied on different parts, 1948 and then 1967. So it is complete occupation. What breed Hamas in 1985? Palestinian problem started in 1947. Hamas only in 1985. Hezbollah in 1983. So therefore, it's not because of they just came from nowhere. Hamas is part of the Palestinian fabric, whether we like it or not. Yeah, they are adhere to the Islamic, Islamic way and political way in bartering. But okay, I'm a Christian. I don't condone that. However, they are part of the Palestinian fabric. They were elected officially in 2006, and Jimmy Carter himself went there to oversee the election. It was a legitimate election. They won the election, and then United States immediately say, no, let's put a siege on Gaza, along with the Israelis. So therefore, it's not that if we have to look at the root of the problem. Occupation is root number one. End occupation today, tomorrow you'll have. In 1993, Oslo, and I know that we are very pessimistic. Myself, I have known, I'm Palestinian, and I know how they think, I know how big heart they have. In 1993, a lot of people were celebration because they start seeing a hope, a light of hope that we could have peace one day in Palestine. I went there in 1998, hoping that it will change and people will live in peace and together. To a point that in 93, for a period of 2 years, people were so happy on both sides about this. But the Israelis renege on that and blow up all these peace process of Oslo, and that we came back to square one. And that's what created this more trouble, more fighting, and to reach to the point where we at now today to October 7th. So the point, yeah, I'm sure if you end the occupation, yes, we're gonna have peace,
okay.
and people will love each other and just leave United States also out of it and other Western country, because now the Israeli entity or the Zionist entity in Israel also play as an agent for these countries, for the biggest country and the world power.
Suhad and you both laughed when I presented that scenario. So go ahead and comment on it. Suhad, if you want to go first, go ahead.
I'll build on what Musa said. Hamas and these, you guys want to label as terrorist radical organizations, were not in existence in 1948, yet the land theft happened. 750,000 Palestinians were displaced, and then an equal amount were murdered and killed. Then came 1967, the Six-Day War that my parents left in. Hamas did not exist then, yet land theft, killing of Palestinians, stealing of land was still happening. I think accountability is inappropriately, it's displaced inappropriately. I think people want to see the end of the occupation, period. I think that is going to be what's going to bring peace to the Middle East. Nobody, or to Palestine, nobody wants to live under occupation. And when I talk about accountability, we have, I mean, Israel has violated 62 UN resolutions since 1968, and 45 of them have been since 2013. Yet the international community turns a blind eye because there's veto power. For example, most recently, on October 27th, when the UN met, they overwhelmingly supported a ceasefire and the entry of aid into Gaza. 122 countries in favor of that. Yet the 12 or 13 that vetoed it, that voted no, because they had veto power, they won. And there's no ceasefire there. And Israel happens to be one of those countries, along with the US. So accountability is inappropriately displaced, and the blame is always on the Palestinian people, where we have to always prove that we sympathize. We have to prove that, oh, we don't agree with this, or we don't validate that action, or we don't, prescribe to this ideology. But I don't think you're going to find a single Palestinian that's going to say they don't want the occupation to end. And this would be the deal maker in regards to peace. So until people start holding Israel accountable, they're going to keep functioning without impunity. UN sanctions broken, again, 62 of them. How many war crimes have they committed? Building the wall, no freedom of travel. They're not securing the safety of the people they are occupying. Their collective punishment. These are all war crimes that Israel's committing before our eyes. And back during the Holocaust, we did not get to watch what happened. People heard about it, read about it in the papers. In this day and age with social media, people are actually seeing and watching this unfold before their eyes, yet there is still the audacity of the powers that be to actually veto something like aid to children. They're watching the white phosphorus getting dropped on these children, and they're just burning the flesh off their bodies. Yet nobody, where is the accountability to the Israeli side in this? Where is the, no, we won't stand for this anymore? Israel is a politically created entity. We heard Biden say this. We heard him say, Israel is the best $3 billion investment we've made for our protection in the Middle East. It is a politically created entity. I'll take Islam out of it. I'll take Christianity out of it, and I will take Judaism out of it. This is not a religious war like they want us to believe about the Jews trying to find and come back to the homeland. We have a political creation of a land for the security of the Western world as they see it. Yet there is no accountability to their actions. Their actions continue to go on unpunished, and yet we are always being asked to be apologetic for the reactions we have, or the Palestinians that they have, to fight this occupation.
Red?
To say that get rid of these organizations is to say get rid of the people, the Palestinians, because these people are from among the Palestinian people. They're not aliens that came from a different planet. Again, that I think that's how the media plays, the deflection. Oh, that's the problem. These, the like so-called terrorists, their resistance, they came because, there is occupation. So really, if anybody who's truthful about finding a solution to the atrocities that are committed against the Palestinian people for the past 75 years, have to really look hard and deep to see where the source of the problem is. It's the occupation. You cannot continue to occupy people and expect them to be peaceful. They have the right by international laws, by all kinds of laws, to resist and to fight back by all possible means. So when the media call them terrorists, I'll tell you something. Back in the 1700s, they called the Sons of Liberty, the British colonial power, they called them terrorists at the time. So if we want to use that analogy, then the ones that they were fighting to for the freedom of the U.S., the United States people, the citizens in here, they were terrorists. If we want to adopt that analogy, so I mean, I don't know which analogy you want to go by, but if you really want the international law, these are legal means that they have every right to use.
So here you have two peoples. You have the Palestinians, many of whom are Arab, others are Christian, and then you have the Israelis, most of them, and Jews. And they're all, the battle is within a geographic region. One side, the Israelis, have a protector, the United States. And so the question I have is, if the U.S. were not Israel's protector, do you think we'd see a different situation in Israel between the Israelis and the Palestinians? Go ahead, Musa.
Yeah, I mean, it is a simple question, but the answer is not simple.
Right.
But in a way, the quick answer, yes, of course. The problem is, the Zionist movement, when it started in the middle of last century and beyond, it was born from the womb of the imperialist power. It didn't come from vague. Yes, it was, pretending that it is the only homeland for the Jewish people is this, but actually it was a political movement. And this political movement is an organic, result as this imperialist power. Since the British, before, when they were in power, they the one who pushed for Israel to be there in order to be a gateway to the Far East and also to the Middle East. And then when the oil was discovered in the Middle East, that the interest was more and the importance of Israel become more. So the question is, as a Palestinian, and anybody Palestinian, I'm talking about all the Palestinians would say, if you in the occupation, in the power that and the interest that United States, which is impossible to forgive all the Middle East and forget about the interest in the Middle East, then why not? I see that we could live together. We have big hearts that we could forgive. But the question is, if that happened, I don't think it will.
Suad?
Well, I think even your guests on your last episode, the pro-Israeli guests, Bonnie Birdman and Eli, applauded the continuous support that they get from the U.S., from the politicians. Right. She mentioned politicians from the local level here in Youngstown, Ohio area, all the way to state level in Columbus, and then nationally, and then the international support. So I would say, like Musa, the short answer would be yes. I think without the unequivocal U.S. support and the $3 billion a year that we send them on top of additional money that is sent to support Israel in times like this, that there is a chance that, Israel may not be as powerful as it is right now. But then when you take into account what Musa mentioned, the interests in the natural resources and the inherent wealth of the region itself, and you see how other countries might be enticed to lend their support to Israel to gain the benefits and reap some of the rewards of those resources, there's a chance that, it could sway in another direction again. Maybe not as strong, not as powerful, but again, we cannot sit back and not scrutinize and be skeptical of the political affiliations that have been created with Israel that keep lending it the support that has allowed it to thrive, which I don't believe without it that they would thrive.
Finally, because I know you have the 5 o'clock event at YSU, Suad, the rise of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia not only in that region of the world, but throughout Europe and now in this country, suggests that the problems that have occurred with this current war have actually divided communities, like in America, that at one time, used to get together. I know after 40 years of being a journalist in Youngstown, I used to cover so many of the, Israeli, the Jewish, Arab, meetings and conferences, and the religious gatherings led by at one time Bishop Malone of the Roman Catholic Diocese. It just seems that all of that has now crumbled, or am I being too pessimistic? And Abed, if you Sared, if you want to start, and then we can conclude with Suhad.
Well, part of the blame falls on the media and on the Zionists when they tie being anti-Zionist or anti the atrocities of the apartheid state of Israel, meaning that you're anti-Semitic. That's really part of the problem. I mean, you can be against a policy. I mean, we can be against our government here, a policy that our government adopts. That does not mean we're not patriotic. That doesn't mean that we're against the United States. So only when it comes to the issue of the apartheid state in Israel, and you speak against the atrocities they're committing against the Palestinian people for the past 75 years, you're immediately, labeled as anti-Semite because they want to silence you. And a lot of people are scared to speak because they don't want to be labeled as anti-Semitic. Well, the people should know that we are also Semites. We are actually the sons of Abraham too.
Right.
So, they cannot label us as that. I can speak, against any inhumane, treatments of any human, okay, without being worried about being labeled this or that. So I think part of that reason, is the way they tie, anti-Zionist or anti-apartheid Israel to be anti-Semitic.
Okay. Musa?
Yeah, you know what? It is so sad that we usually use these words, very easy, and especially in the media and in the propaganda. I would call it a mendacious propaganda, because a lot of it is also full of lies. And I agree with you. We always, as Jewish brethren, we have no problem, whether in Palestine. My next door neighbor to my grandmother was the best Jewish lady in the world that you could ever have as a neighbor. So there is nothing about that from that point or anything from the hate. What you see in the media and the hype, and unfortunately all the violence activity against Jews, and we condemn that very, very harshly, or against Muslim, and we condemn that very harshly. It comes from an average American person, not from us against them or them against us, but rather from like the one in Chicago,
Yes.
47 times they stabbed. That have nothing to do with our ethnicity or the Middle Eastern ethnicity. Unfortunately, it was hype, just like you see in a drive-by shooting or school shooting that people imitate each other and doing stuff like that. And during the hype, you see an increase in that. We totally condemn that. We're against it. And that's where our position is, and we do not like to see it, because if you're a racist against one race or one religion, then you are racist against everybody and against all religion. If you're racist against black, then you're racist against everybody, including Asians and Muslim and everybody. So there's no limitation, and that's why we say no racism here, no hate. No anti-Semitism, because we are a Semite just like everybody else from that point. And hopefully that this country wakes up to its conscience to say, hey, enough is enough. We need to stop the genocide that's going in Gaza. It's already by 2.5 Hiroshima bomb equivalent been bombed on Gaza City today. And that has to stop. And maybe when incubation ends, maybe we have peace.
Suhad, finally, thank you. I'll give you the last word, but thank you for arranging this. I hope you've had an opportunity, all three of you have had the opportunity to express yourselves and to, to share your views and ideas. So
Yeah.
go ahead, Suha.
No, I just want to say, one, I don't think Islamophobia ever went away. I think it's been here and thriving even more so after 9/11. I think what we are seeing when we start hearing, and again, like Musa said, loosely thrown around terms like anti-Semitic, people are afraid to even talk about Israel and Palestine for being accused of being anti-Semitic if they have the wrong opinion of it. So the term is thrown around loosely, but I think what we're starting to see more is a recognition of what is happening in Palestine and more questioning of the Israeli side. Whereas, like we said in the past, it's been without impunity. The Israeli actions, what's happened over there, they've just kind of kept going under the radar, and it's always been the Palestinians defending their moral fiber, defending the actions, and being asked why. And I think now, for the first time, we're seeing a change in the narrative. We're actually seeing people asking people of the Jewish faith, people who support Israel, why? Why are you supporting what's happening in Gaza? Why do you support the stealing of land? Why are you supporting this? So I think with that comes the feeling of insecurity and the feeling of questioning and feeling that maybe there is some judgment against you now. And to label people's questioning of Israel and to label it as anti-Semitic, and to me, sometimes that's just a conversation stopper. The minute somebody says something that they question that Israel did and you're called anti-Semitic, it's a conversation stopper and it makes the other person step back. We have to, one, not use that word in the negative connotation. Like Musa said, once you're racist towards one group, you are just racist, period. But we have to shy away from labeling everybody who questions what's happening with Israel as being anti-Semitic if we question an action, because nobody argues or instills fear when somebody asks a Palestinian to defend why they're doing what they're doing or questions why Palestine is doing what it's doing. So I think the terms are used loosely. I think a lot of times they're used by people who are not quite well versed or educated in what is happening over there in Palestine. But I know that when people say, oh, they're anti-Semitic or that they made a comment, I try more to lean towards educating somebody and try to understand what was asked rather than let somebody walk away thinking that somebody was Islamophobic or anti-Semitic towards them. I'm not saying it doesn't exist and there aren't people who maybe prescribe to that mentality, but I believe in general, just from conversations I've been privy to, the words are used so loosely and inappropriately that it's not conducive to open dialogue and conversation. So.
Well, yeah, we've run out of time because of your schedule. But once again, thank you very much, all three of you, for this.
I want to thank you
for this conversation. This is if nothing else, this is a teachable moment, not only for for the world, but especially for Americans, because one thing that this conflict has shown is that there's a lot of ignorance out there. And I think that needs to be addressed. So again, so thank you, Suhan.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening, everybody.
You too.
Thank you.
Peace. Thank you.
Bye.
We've come to the end of another heart-wrenching discussion of the Israeli-Hamas war. I thank Dr. Suhad Hadi, Musa Kassis, and Rahid Kahatib for their honest appraisal of what's happening in that volatile region of the world and providing the Palestinian point of view. What happens next is anybody's guess, but there is little reason for optimism. The Scribbler video podcast can be found on YouTube, Facebook, and other platforms. Please hit the subscribe and share buttons and add your comments. Keeping the lines of communication open is important to an understanding of what's transpiring. These podcasts are produced by Andy Kunkel, who also is the technical director and videographer. Andy does an exceptional job, and I thank him most sincerely. I'm Bertram de Souza, author of the book No Holds Barred, that can be ordered online at scribblergroup.com or purchased at Barnes & Noble in Boardman. I wish you well.